Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Wednesday, May 27th, and we have a pretty full schedule for you today. We're going to be talking some NFL, some MLB, a little bit, not a lot of NHL, and some NBA. So we have pretty much all four major sports are going to be covering a little bit about today. We're going to start with the NFL. Specifically, as of right now, the NFL has no minicamp dates, no dates set in stone about when mini camps or teams really starting to practice together are going to start. The NFL's vice president of communications has said that they're not putting dates on a return yet, but they're still working with the NFL Players Association, trying to find something that's safe, that's quick but also safe, is being the operative clause in the plan. As per the NFLPA's president, who is, Cleveland Browns offensive lineman J.C. Tretter, our union has not agreed to any reopening plan. Any reports about coming back to work are hypothetical. You'll hear from the NFLPA when there are new developments. So it really seems like right now they're still in the strict negotiation phase of everything, and we'll kind of learn more as the negotiations go on. But the NFL, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of backlash because the NFL season is the season that hypothetically would be affected the least because of the fact of a later start date. But, at this point, it's unclear how a NFL or how the pushing back of minicamps would affect the start of the regular season. Just minicamps could open as early as June 15th if coaches can resume their normal work schedule, or if they can kind of get back into the flow of things within the next week. But a lot of it depends on the California governor, who still hasn't given the okay, like Governor Cuomo has in New York, to allow sports teams to practice, because as many people may or may not know, California recently extended their quarantine by another 3 months. So that's kind of where the NFL is in regards to a return or their kind of proposal. But I mean, like I said, their season is probably going to be the least affected because of the fact that it was pretty much the off season for them to begin with when everything started going down. On some other news recently, there has been a report coming out from Miami that the Dolphins may be going with Tua as their opening week quarterback. There are a couple factors going into it. One is that he is off to he's off to a good start. He was a 5th overall pick for a reason. He was one of the top quarterbacks in the class, of a class that was dominated by a lot of really good quarterbacks. He learns quickly. He's a smart football player. He's apparently he's adapted really well and started to learn Miami's offense very quickly. A lot of people didn't expect to see Tua start right away. They figured it would be Fitzmagic. I mean, if Tua doesn't do well, Ryan Fitzpatrick's still going to go out there and win you games. I mean, he did it last year when it seemed like the Dolphins were trying to tank for Tua, but he was still able to win them some games, and he was able to beat the New England Patriots, something he's done a few times in his career. And they open the season against the Patriots, so the Dolphins play the Patriots week 1, so it'll be interesting to see if they are going to pretty much throw Tua into the gauntlet his first week, or they will let Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of do his thing, because he's very, very good against the Patriots. He's a quarterback that everyone thinks is down and out for the count, but he seems to always come back and really just kind of shove it in your face and say he's still around. Some more pros to Tua is that they view Tua as very adaptable and very smart, which like I said, is part of the reason why they're saying that it may not be a sit out your first year, learn from Ryan Fitzpatrick. It may be, all right, we're going to kind of let you kind of run wild right away. That's kind of what Cincinnati's doing with Joe Burrow, as they really don't have another quarterback option, especially with Andy Dalton out of town. But I think the fact that the Dolphins have a failsafe in Ryan Fitzpatrick, a proven, very, very high-quality backup quarterback, I think is going to make it a little bit easier for them to give Tua some starts, give him some reps, because it's not that Ryan Fitzpatrick is a top quarterback in the league. He's a very solid quarterback. But I think it works really well that he can go out there and win them some games. He can teach Tua along the way, someone who's been in the league for a long time. But at the same point, it's not like you have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL like you do. The whole problem up in Green Bay is Jordan Love is going to be taking snaps from Aaron Rodgers or vice versa, however the Packers are viewing it right now. But here, it's a different story. You drafted your quarterback. You have a very solid backup, and I think it's going to complement. I think it's going to be an interesting plan whenever they're able to give Tua the start. But I think you're gonna see a lot more of him his rookie year. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to go back to Major League Baseball. I really haven't talked about the Major League Baseball proposal in a minute. The biggest thing are the proposed salary cuts. So these salary cuts, it's something that, you're seeing them right now. But if you look at that graph, a player that makes $500,000 is going to be taking a 215% pay decrease to $260,000. As it starts to move up, the percentage that the contract is being depleted by, it starts to become quite alarming. Most players are in that 15 to 20. I would say the 15 to 25 are your top players. And those guys are taking pay cuts anywhere from 370 to 413%. The players that are, just kind of hanging on by a little bit are taking pay cuts of 300% to 272%. Those are guys that are making $1 to $2 million, up to $5 million, taking pay cuts as big as 300%. Now, if you look at the figures and you say, okay, well, they're still making $1 million. The thing you have to realize is that the players aren't going to sign on because I'm not trying to compare professional athletes to just everyday people, but if your salary was going to get cut by 300%, I'm not sure you would agree to work. Especially for those people that are in the $500,000 range, taking a pay cut of 215%. And those are the Major League Baseball players. Those are at the very, very top. We're going to cover minor league baseball a little bit later, and the numbers you're going to see there are quite staggering, actually. And this isn't with a pay cut. This is with them potentially missing this season. But going back to Major League Baseball, these are the proposed pay cuts by Major League Baseball, and I don't see the players agreeing to this at all. I really don't, especially because the players that are making more money are being that their figures are being completely, they're almost being depleted by 450, 500%, and it's. To be honest with you, I don't see this as being something that the players are going to agree on. I mean, if the numbers were, if the pay cuts weren't that drastic, or I even think if the pay cuts were more evenly spread. To be honest with you, I think that if they across the board cut payment by 230%, you would still get some. I think you'd have more traction if everyone's pay cut was the same. But the fact that the players, and you're going to notice, you hear the players that make the most money are speaking out against it. The Bryce Harpers, the Blake Snells, guys that signed bigger contracts are the ones speaking out against it because obviously they're the ones that are affected the most by this. So I'm not going to kind of start picking sides. Is Major League Baseball, are the owners correct? Are the players right? I think that it's a lot of greediness on both sides. Because to be honest with you, I don't think the pay cuts by this much across the board are the same are the same as not having fans for half of a season, or having no fans for a full season and having no revenue for half a season. I don't see how it's possible that these pay cuts could equate to the same thing, because you have to look at the markets. Yes, you have some smaller markets that are paying for more expensive players. So is your viewership going to be, it really depends. If you're playing in Seattle, which is probably one of the smallest markets, or you have to look at their roster. Are they paying somebody a lot of money? Not really. They're paying Kyle Seager. He's their highest contract. But are they going to get television ratings because they're pretty much one of the only teams in the Northwest? Yeah. So I don't see how all of this money that Major League Baseball, that the owners are saying they have to take, equates to the amount of loss that they're going to be taking. But at the same time, I don't think players should be demanding to be paid their full salaries or paid half their salary for half of a season. I think there has to be some pay cut. I do find this being very extreme, and you're penalizing players for being very good. This plan penalizes the players that have been paid and are very good, because obviously the good players get signed to big contracts, and those guys are the ones that are going to be sacrificing the most. The way that this benefits some players is that a lot of contracts are backloaded, which means their first couple years of the contract aren't as much as the last 2 or 3. So they're getting paid more towards the end of their contract than at the beginning, which has something to do with their thoughts on what the average is for someone of their skill set in 3 or 4 years. I'm not going to really get too big into contract building and that kind of stuff, because it's kind of a difficult topic to explain shorthand. But long story short, contracts are the average annual value. Doesn't stay isn't a flat rate. Like if you're making let's say your contract is for $350 million over 10 years. That doesn't mean you're getting paid $35 million every single season. You could be getting paid $30 million, 28, but the rest of the money, your last 2 or 3 years, you're getting paid $38, $39, $40 million. So those players are kind of sitting a little bit. I mean, not granted, they're still going to be losing 430% if they're making $30 million instead of $35. But it's better off than some. But then you get guys that are towards the end of their contracts, and it's not. I think the biggest thing is the players who signed a qualifying offer. So the qualifying offer is a 1-year deal to stay with the team, but it's a fixed amount of money. So even if you're a top 10 player or you're a bottom player, if your team wants to give you a qualifying offer, it is for the same amount. I think it was $18 million, between $18 and $20 million for 1 year for players who accepted the qualifying offer. Those individuals will be making $5 million, which is more than they could have gotten more on a free agent market. But they saw the big lump sum back in October or November, and they thought that was going to be a good decision for them. And now they're stuck in a very difficult position. So I don't see, this kind of brings me to my other point. It looks kind of upsetting as a baseball fan, even though this is the day one of negotiations, and this is towards the beginning of negotiation. The fact that there seems to be such a big gap between the players and the owners accepting on a deal is very alarming, because if you look at the NFL or the NBA, yes, there has been some differences, but the gap isn't as big. It's a smaller gap that is very bridgeable. Here it seems like it's going to take more time to try to bridge and find a solution than there is time left in the year for a season to occur. So to be honest with you, like I said this in the last video, if a deal isn't reached by I'm going to even give the second week of June, the season's going to get pushed back and potentially even postponed, because the season is supposed to be resuming the first week of July, and players are supposed to be back training the middle of June, or their modified spring training. And if the players don't have on paper that the pay cuts aren't going to be this extreme, I don't even see them going to team workouts. I don't even see them going. I think they're going to almost do what some NFL players are, which are holding out until they get the contract that they want. You think Le'Veon Bell did that. Todd Gurley did that. And I this season could potentially be washed with a player lockout, not necessarily because of the virus, but I think a player lockout is going to occur. And it doesn't seem, at this point, it doesn't seem like Major League Baseball and the owners are close to a deal to resume baseball in the 2020 season. Something a little bit lighter I saw. I know it was all dismal. Baseball's not coming. It doesn't look like baseball's coming back. One question I had, and please feel free to leave your answers down below. How do you think stats will be counted this year if a baseball season happens for an 82? Because if you think about it, that could either completely inflate or deflate a player's career stats. If you think about it, because some players have hit over 400 in half of a season. So would that count? Would they hold the Major League Baseball record for the highest batting average if they hit over 430? I think it was something ridiculous, like 423, 430, the highest all-time average. If somebody gets hot and starts hitting in half of a season, could we potentially see something like that? Or could we, obviously there definitely won't be, no one's breaking the home run record. I think the quickest one to see would be batting average and on-base percentage. And I see those records potentially being broken, or ERA. You look at some players in like up to the All-Star break, they have sub-1 ERAs. I think the Major League record is Bob Gibson at 1.12, a 1.12 ERA. Could that potentially be broken by a starting pitcher in half of a season? And will it count as being a broken record? I see a lot of guys that would own the record, or who own records, or some older players saying, no, that's not going to count. They didn't play a full season. But if you think about it, the season hasn't been the same. The Major League Baseball season used to be 154 games in a year. Then it was 162. Now it's not half of a season, but I mean, players got 8 more games to break the record. You get the guys that Roger Maris was in 154. The guys that broke the record for the home run race, the 70 home runs, they broke that. They had an extra 8 days, and I think they would have been something like tied with Maris or something like that over the last 8 games. So it's like, how do you weigh that? Like, are those records going to go in a record book with an asterisk, kind of like the Houston Astros World Championship? But I'm not going to get into that. But will those stats be with some big parentheses around them, or big quotes around them, because it was a half of a season? I think that's something that's going to be very interesting to look at, especially if we get something that's approaching, a Major League Baseball record. But also on the flip side, you look at players like, we'll use Jose Ramirez last year. He had an abysmal first half, but picked it up and played, and had a good season after the fact. If he has an abysmal half of a season here, because he probably can't get constant reps against game pitching, and he's going to kind of be coming in cold and just going right into it. Career stats could be ruined, and especially players that are free agents after this season, if they don't have a good year, their stock just absolutely plummeted. So they're not going to get big free agent contracts. Guys that sign 1-year deals to kind of bridge the gap and, wanted to go improve themselves this year before trying to get a bigger contract. Those guys, they're going to have a lot more difficult of a time than, because if they need to perform well in only half the time. And, that might be, some may say that's easy because, well, you have half the game, you have half the season to kind of, if you did poorly, your stats can get inflated, you had fewer at-bats and that kind of stuff. But on the flip side, your stats could also be deflated if you don't get off to a good start. And then it could be kind of insurmountable because you don't have the number of at-bats. Because if you look at it, players historically, there are a good number of players. Mark Teixeira was notorious for getting off to bad, slow starts to begin the season. You can't afford to get off to a slow start this year, especially if you're trying to pick up a contract. You're trying to pick up a contract extension. So this is a very, very big season for a lot of players. And the current rate of how things aren't going well, if the season gets shortened even more, it's just going to put a lot more stress on players who are looking to get paid next year and are going to become free agents. Kind of flipping back around to money, the Marlins are the first Major League Baseball team to announce that they will continue to pay their minor league players through August, even though at this point it doesn't look like there's going to be a minor league season. At this point, there's not even a timetable. There aren't even negotiations if minor league baseball is back. They're trying to, be able to put Major League Baseball back, let alone now in all these little tiny cities all across the country where there are minor league teams. That's the fact that the Marlins are willing to pay their players is really good. The Oakland A's are going to stop paying their minor league players June 1st. That's big. Those minor league baseball players, probably for the first time, if there's no season, they're going to have to go out and start looking for jobs because a Major League Baseball salary, I want to put this into perspective. Rookie or short season, the lowest level, you make $400 a week. Multiply that's $1,600 for a month, and a baseball season, best case scenario, minor league baseball season is 5 months. That means they're making $8,000. Single A, $10,000. Double A, these are all annuals, $12,000, and Triple A, $14,000. All these figures are before taxes, before fees, before travel expenses, and that kind of stuff. Minor league baseball, people don't realize this, but minor league baseball players pretty much play pretty close to poverty. Yes, at the end, the reward could be fantastic, millions and millions of dollars, but it's a pretty rough start for a lot of Major League Baseball players, and I don't think that gets talked about enough. Here we are, Major League Baseball are complaining that their salary is millions of dollars. Here, minor league players are hoping that they're going to be able to make a portion of $14,000. There was an interesting article I read going back to Major League Baseball saying how the pay cuts hurt benefit the owners at the expense of the best players in baseball. Because, like I said earlier, the best players in baseball make the most money. So the players that are the best are getting penalized for being the best, which doesn't make any sense. I think that's definitely going to be a big gap between where players are, where thoughts are. So that's kind of how I'm going to close it out. Let me know, which I find mind-boggling. So I think we have to start. I think after a certain point, major leaguers have to kind of stop and think it could be a lot less. There could be a very, very unfortunate. Then you look at guys that are making minor league salaries playing in the big leagues. That they don't have big, $1 million contracts. They're probably $250,000, which is not something to be, lifting your nose at. But still, it's going to be very interesting. And I think at this point, it's the fact that I don't think there's going to be a minor league baseball season. The fact that it's taken, I'm not going to say that it's taken this long, but the fact that they haven't come to anything for a Major League Baseball season, let alone start talking about minor league baseball, I don't see that happening because I see this Major League Baseball deal taking until mid-June. At that point, they could start thinking about minor league baseball. And then that could take some weeks. And before you know it, it's going to be July and August, and there's not even going to be a point of playing for 2 months. And the biggest thing outside of economics is development. You need to get a lot of repetitions in order to even just stay at the same level you're at, let alone climb. You definitely need to get reps to climb, but even just to kind of stay where you're at, you need constant repetitions. If you aren't able to get those in-game repetitions in minor league baseball, you are going to see some serious regression across the board for minor league baseball players, which I think is probably the biggest thing. That's why I'm not talking economics here. That's the biggest downside to this whole thing going on, is because these guys are the future of baseball, and you're just delaying. When teams draft players or teams go through their minor league system, they put timetables on players. They say he will be major league ready by 2022. Whether that happens or not, but they say hopefully by 2022 this guy will be our starting left fielder. Now all that gets delayed. So teams rebuilding like the Baltimore Orioles, like the Toronto Blue Jays to some extent, to the Miami Marlins, their plans are just keep getting pushed off the fewer reps, or because if you think about it, there's no season. They will be one whole year behind the major league players. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see older players that probably should be out of the league after this year come back for another one because they were able to play a season and they were able to get their reps in. But it's definitely something we're going to have to look at. Now we're going to switch gears. We're going to go towards the NBA. On Friday, the Board of Governors is going to be meeting with Commissioner Adam Silver on Friday to talk about NBA's return to play. But that conversation on Friday is not expected to end with a finalized plan to be sent to the Players Association. It is still strictly logistics at this point. There is no plan to sign on the dotted line, no timetable. It's no, more or less after this meeting comes out on Friday, don't expect to have a season's going to start today. Also in the NBA is negotiating with Disney to use their ESPN Make a Wonderful World of Dreams, something like that. Disney's sports facility in Orlando to be the site for whatever the NBA has planned. And that's the other thing. The NHL has a plan. They are going to do this fantastic, I think, 2014 bracket, which I think is going to boost the NHL's ratings because people are going to want to watch this because this looks entertaining. Every team having a shot, regardless of how the season went for them. Every team, or most teams, being able to kind of jump in and have a shot, except for the teams that are obviously completely out of it. But I think that is really, really cool. But the NBA, they still have 3 options up on the table. And those are the 3 options we've thought about since day one of this, back in March 11th when the season was suspended. There are 3 formats. Continue the season where it left off and then find your division winners and that kind of stuff. End the season where it is now and have the playoffs just with what the standings were right now, or do the tournament round robin, however you want to structure it. A tournament bracket is what I'll call it, with all the teams. If you continue the season, I think the season had 2 or 3 weeks. Damian Lillard, because I think the Trailblazers were out of it. They didn't have a shot. If you continue the season, he said, I'll get all amped up to play for 2 weeks and then go back to sitting on my couch because we're out of the playoffs. So what's the point of that? If you end the season early, then you have the teams that were 1-2 games out. Now they're all up in arms because we could have made the playoffs. What about teams that were half to a half game out? Or what about the tiebreakers? That's the biggest thing. Especially teams that were close, that were slated to play each other towards the end, which could have been a big deal in terms of tiebreakers, really affects that bracket. I think the best option at this point is the tournament style similar to the NHL because it's going to be entertaining as heck. It's going to be the March Madness with professional athletes, upsets, this kind of stuff. And yeah, this teams that were where they were seeded make a difference in terms of buys and that kind of stuff. But every team has a shot because if a team gets hot at the right time, they have a shot to make it to the playoffs. And I think this tournament style is really going to be interesting and really something that, we're going to want to see. And it would definitely boost the ratings, I think, of the NBA because you're going to see a lot of people very intrigued by a bunch of professional athletes playing kind of the same format that us kids play at. We play tournament style sports pretty much every weekend year round between baseball tournaments, hockey, basketball, football. I don't know necessarily about football, but all these sports tournaments It'd be really fun to see how professional athletes deal with crunch because you look at a lot of players haven't had a lot of crunch time or a lot of playoff experiences. This will kind of push players into the spotlight and say, you want to say you're one of the best in the league. Now's your chance to go out and prove it. Doesn't matter that the team around you is garbage. When push comes to shove, how do you play in the playoffs? Because we never really get to see how that happens with a lot of players on teams like the Knicks, teams like the Orlando Magic, teams that are kind of been on the outside looking in for some time now. So I really think that is going to be, I really think that the tournament style is the best way to go with things right now. What you guys think about these proposals now, about Major League Baseball's proposal, or anything NBA, NHL, NFL. Even if I don't really talk about it, and you wanna hear my thoughts on it, I'll definitely do research before I answer your questions and that kind of stuff. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.